The Wither Storm, the living, breathing black hole of the Minecraft universe. Its ever-increasing power and hunger are thought by many to be unstoppable. Now, there have been many stories of this apocalyptic monstrosity and its origin, but this is the true story of the Wither Storm. Shouts filled the night sky as the majestic builder city was being engulfed in flames. Buildings crumbled, and distant explosions rang out as the residents ran for their lives. The city was under siege from a terrifying wither. Wherever it went, destruction followed, as its very presence caused blocks around it to be destroyed. A few brave fighters tried to fend off the floating monstrosity, but they stood little chance against it. The wither fought back by flinging wither skulls at its assailants that exploded on contact.
It's hopeless! I don't want to die!
The wither was truly a living calamity. But how did the builders befall such a disastrous fate? With their unprecedented crafting and building capabilities, the ancient builders were believed to have conquered the Minecraft world as they knew it. However, like many great things, they fell to their own hubris. With their ever-expanding ambition, they turned their focus to a new field of study: resurrection. The last thing for them to conquer was death itself. Hey viewers, I wanted to tell you about today's sponsor, a Web3 multiplayer game called The Sandbox. Together with The Sandbox, we're giving an iPhone or $1,000 in Minecoins and more to 3 lucky viewers, so stay tuned to find out more. With over 300,000 gamers playing and creating, it's super fun. The Sandbox is trusted by over 200 brands, like Snoop Dogg, Tony Hawk, and our favorite, The Walking Dead. You'll work with Carl to rebuild Alexandria, interact with Negan, and even fight zombies with Michonne. The Sandbox has tons of user-generated content. Players can create their own high-quality dungeon crawlers, escape rooms, or even a whole new world. For a chance to win an iPhone or 1,000 Minecoins, use my link below to download the game for free on your computer. Just use Google or Facebook to sign in and you're good to go. The game is completely free with no purchases necessary. Hop onto the game and choose an experience that looks cool and complete one quest for one entry. The more quests you complete, the more entries you get. Everyone who completes one quest by the end of the month will get the Lorecraft limited edition silver selfie stick. There will only be 2,500 of these in the game, so get it fast. 90 lucky winners will get a rare golden selfie stick, and 10 will receive the extremely rare diamond selfie stick. This all ends March 1st. Together, if we get 10,000 downloads, the Sandbox will also make me an NPC in the game, and give me and a lucky viewer tickets to attend the upcoming Snoop Dogg concert in the Sandbox. Thanks again to the Sandbox for sponsoring this video. Having traveled to the Nether and built great fortresses, they became fascinated with the new things they found there. Specifically, the abundant soul sand caught their attention. They brought it back en masse to be studied in underground facilities. Believing it contained the souls of the dead, the builders hoped to use it to bring back the deceased. After years of study, they made progress using wither skeleton remains as a bonding agent. It made sense to these crafters. A soul plus a body equals a living person. They just had to get the equation right.
This is it. I can feel it.
On one unfortunate day, they succeeded in creating something, but it wasn't what they had hoped for. A terrifying creature of black bone floated in place after their latest experiment. The researchers stood in awe. After a few seconds, an unearthly cry rang out across the entire world. The scientists ran in terror as the creature began to destroy everything before it. The wither broke out of the facility and started its path of destruction. Despite only having been a few hours, the wither was already destroying the second builder city it had come across. Fleeing from the destruction was one of the researchers who helped make the wither, a man by the name of Victor. Like the other surviving scientists and many builder leaders, he had received orders from the higher-ups to proceed with the plan to escape through a new portal being constructed. Victor hated this plan. How could they abandon the utopia they had made here? Not only that, but even if they successfully made a new type of portal, no one would know what awaited them on the other side. Instead, Victor joined a group of like-minded individuals who planned to stay in this world and fight. Notable alongside them was the builder hero Steve. Despite this, the future still looked grim for this resistance group as they retreated while coming up with a plan to defeat the seemingly unstoppable monster. And so, the Wither's destruction went unchecked as it traveled from city to city, wiping out every builder and building it came across. No living thing was spared from its wrath. Victor's group constantly tried to fight the Wither. They made enchantments previously thought impossible. They crafted weapons and potions stronger than ever seen before, but none of it mattered when facing the Wither's strength. Years passed like this. The great builder structures dotting the land all vanished. Only a few survivors remained, hiding in shoddy forts built while being too scared to sleep. Victor and the resistance group were the only remaining hope for the builders.
There has to be a way to kill it. Nothing is invincible.
If there were a way to kill it, don't you think I would have already done it? We have to make or find something strong enough to...
Steve let himself trail off. This isn't the first time he would suddenly go quiet. Victor had noticed before, but now he was growing sure. Despite being a hero that went through countless trials, Steve had become a nervous wreck. Not only that, Victor often got the feeling that Steve was hiding something from the rest of the group. Victor couldn't voice his concerns though, not against a legendary hero, so instead, he started investigating on his own. Asking around, he learned of Steve's heroic tales of fighting creatures like Giant Alex and Herobrine. He confirmed with Steve that those stories were true, not just tales to scare young builder children. Victor had a realization. Herobrine. If it was him, maybe he could help with the Wither. Victor knew Steve would protest at this plan, so he kept it a secret and investigated Herobrine and his whereabouts himself. After a while, he uncovered rumors of his location and set off alone to meet him. As the sun started to disappear on the horizon, Victor came across a mansion in a forest of leafless trees. An eerie silence stretched out around this place. As Victor cautiously explored inside, he saw no traces of anyone or anything. No one had seen Herobrine in ages. Maybe this was a fruitless endeavor. Just as he was about to leave, Victor heard a bone-chilling voice.
And who is this little insect that entered my humble abode?
Standing behind Victor was the infamous villain himself, two glowing eyes staring daggers down at him. Herobrine looked at him like a predator looking at prey. Victor immediately explained his intentions, wanting to seek help from him. He promised he would do anything in return if Herobrine could help defeat the Wither. After a long pause, Herobrine led Victor up through the mansion. He explained that there was something that could be used to kill the Wither. If he told him, all Victor would have to do is give it to Herobrine afterward. Agreeing, Herobrine brought Victor to an unfinished altar and started divulging information about the command block. It was certainly strong enough to deal with the Wither, but Victor would have to find it first. Victor snuck back into the newest base of the resistant forces. This time, Steve really outdid himself and built them a castle.
Do you ever run out of material?
No, not really.
Victor had to keep his deal with Herobrine to himself. Who knows the reaction his allies would have if they found out. After returning back, Victor began to research the command block in secret. The powers described to him by Herobrine were truly fascinating. The strength to mess with the very fabric of this reality. Victor shuddered at the thought of someone like Herobrine having this power.
One problem at a time.
Victor quickly became stumped trying to find the command block. There was no information about it anywhere. He started to question whether it existed at all, or was just false hope given to him as a cruel joke. In his despair, Victor latched on to a sudden realization. What if the thing Steve is hiding is a command block? Breaking his train of thought was a knock on the door. It was none other than Steve. He did not seem like his normal self, looking at Victor with cold eyes. He stated that he was concerned about Victor as he slowly approached. Before Steve could reach Victor, a sudden explosion alerted the two men. Outside, the Wither had started to attack the castle. Screams could be heard as people started to run for their lives. Steve didn't hesitate to draw his weapon and launch himself into combat. He ducked and dodged explosive skulls as he closed the distance between him and the Wither. The monster turned its attention to the charging hero. Steve slashed with his enchanted sword multiple times, but it proved to do little against the skeletal creature. Other builders tried to help, but their weapons too proved ineffective. Eventually, Steve started to tire and was hit directly by the Wither, sending him crashing back.
This is futile. Everyone, retreat.
The surviving builders knew they had lost, and all fled, except one. Victor had hidden away during the confrontation and used it as his chance to look for what Steve was hiding. He searched through the ruins while the Wither pursued his allies. It wasn't long before he found a secret basement entrance. Delving down deep underground, he finally found it. There, hidden away by Steve, was a command block. It hummed with power, putting Victor in almost a trance. Sure enough, when he picked it up, the very building blocks of the world presented themselves to him. He became lost in its power until an explosion destroyed the entrance to the basement. The Wither had found him. Before Victor could do anything, a skull sent him crashing into the wall. The Wither floated towards him as he struggled to breathe from the impact. It was now or never. Victor grasped the command block and focused on the Wither. Its immense power was even clearer to Victor now. With death approaching, Victor thought of only one word:
Kill.
With sudden flashes of light, the Wither stopped in its tracks before exploding into nothingness. Victor fell to the ground, exhausted by the power he exerted. Curiously, in front of him on the ground was a star-shaped drop he had never seen before. The builders of the Resistance were weakly retreating through the woods when they heard a strange roar echo out behind them. They stopped in confusion. They had only heard a noise like that once before, when the Wither first appeared. Cautiously, they headed back to the ruins. They were shocked at what they found. Victor was injured, standing alone amongst the rubble. The Wither was nowhere to be found. They rushed to him, asking what had happened. Victor explained that he had defeated the Wither using a modified TNT trap. They had tried it before, but this time it must have worked, due to being weakened by Steve. Everyone started to celebrate with great cheers of joy. The only one who didn't look happy was Steve, who watched Victor suspiciously. What really happened was that Victor covered up any traces of the secret basement with TNT.
We can finally rebuild! We can continue our research!
Silence fell. They had just overcome the results of this research. They could not fathom trying again. Disheartened by his allies' lack of support, Victor slipped away from the celebration to think.
It's time to hold up your end of the bargain.
Startled, Victor jumped back to see Herobrine looking down at him. He waited expectantly for the command block to be handed over. Was he really going to surrender such a powerful item? After a small silence, Victor refused. Herobrine became enraged and tried to strike Victor, but suddenly crashed to the ground.
Leave, or I'll do worse than just knocking you out of the sky.
Herobrine swore he would get what was his before vanishing into thin air. Victor simply looked at the command block in his hand. He resolved himself to continue his research. With the command block, surely anything would be possible. With the threat of the Wither past, the builders slowly started to rebuild. Over time, more survivors came out of hiding to rejoin the rest. Celebration lasted for weeks on end. Far away from prying eyes, Victor used the command block to create a secret facility to continue his research on the Resurrection Project.
We will never truly rule this world, not until we conquer death itself.
Victor may have been alone now to continue this massive undertaking, but he had the command block to aid him. With its power, his thoughts were clearer than before, and his body was one that never grew tired. He returned to the Nether to gather more soul sand and pass the days deep in research. To start, he used the command block and the Nether star he got from the Wither to create an amulet. With his perfect memory of seeing the Wither's code, he imbued the amulet with powers to control and contain a Wither. He would need it. As Victor continued his research, he created countless Wither to study. Months passed with little progress to be had. Victor had noticed strange deformities in the latest batch of Wither. Withers with missing parts floated around his holding area. Other Withers had extra parts, like additional heads and arms. Interesting as that may be, Victor was growing desperate. He wasn't getting any closer to his goal. He had one last idea, but it was risky. He resolved himself to use the command block itself in the next attempt to bring back the dead. If anything went wrong, he could still use the amulet to control or even kill what he created. And so, within the holding area, he did just that. Putting the blocks in place, he felt the power emanate off of it. With a blinding flash, it transformed into a Wither unlike any he had seen before. As Victor examined it closer, it stared back at him with intelligence, as if it was studying him too. This made Victor nervous, and he tried to use the amulet to get rid of this new Wither. But to his surprise, it didn't work. With a cry of anger, the newest Wither sent out an unnatural force, sending Victor flying back. To his horror, he watched as the other Withers started to die all around him, their nether stars being absorbed into this new monstrosity. The attraction, like its own gravitational pull, grew stronger as blocks started to float up into it. Victor could not escape, as he too was being pulled in. He tried desperately to use the amulet as some form of control, but it was futile.
No, I cannot end like this!
With a desperate cry, he was absorbed into the Wither. Obsidian skin started to form around the Wither as it grew larger and larger. Finally, it broke free of the holding area, flying into the sky. The clouds darkened as if heralding the awakening of the Wither storm. A head grew around its withered skull, and tentacles appeared, lashing out at various angles. Its one eye scanned the horizon till it saw its target, the new Builder capital. As it floated up over the city, it continued to absorb chunks of blocks. 2 more heads formed with maws full of teeth as the builders down below started to flee in terror. Overcoming one calamity, they were now faced with an absolute apocalypse. The Wither Storm's eyes shot tractor beams that sucked into large town structures. Giant skulls shot out, leaving craters in the city streets. Brave warriors tried to fight back, but they could do nothing to the ever-growing calamity in the sky. As it rained down destruction, the terrain of the land itself started to change. Tentacles appeared out of the ground, lashing out without mercy at the fleeing citizens. Builders and mobs that got too close to its destruction became infected, turning on their once allies. Chaos engulfed the city as the Wither Storm grew larger. Standing on top of a building ready to fight was the hero Steve.
Not after everything I've been through. It can't end here.
He knew he couldn't face that thing, but he still had to try. Shooting out enchanted arrows and slashing at the massive obsidian tentacles that swung at him, Steve tried everything he could to fight the monster. The Wither Storm barely paid attention to the hero of legend at first, as it still consumed the town. Finally falling under the gaze of the giant eyes tractor beam, Steve was pulled up to the Wither Storm. The last anyone saw of the hero was him brandishing his blade as the mouth snapped him up in its jaws. Even those who managed to flee a great distance could not escape the vision of the now gargantuan creature in the sky. As it finished the city off, it split its form into 2 more clones of itself. The few remaining survivors knew it was only a matter of time till the end of the world. Once again, don't forget to download Sandbox using my link down below for a chance to win an iPhone or $1,000 in Minecoins and a selfie stick to use in-game. Thanks Sandbox for sponsoring this video.